Hey, it's Matea,
And Zainab.
and today with Elsa, we are going to be showing you how to bake this cake while telling you about the legalities of consumer protection and product standardization in the EU.
Cake and law, that's a crossover you never knew you needed.
So, for today's chocolate cake, we will be making a 3-layered sponge cake for which we will need flour, sugar, kefir, milk, oil, eggs, unsweetened cocoa powder, baking powder, and vanilla extract.
Then we're going to continue by making the cream by using some mascarpone, some unsoftened butter at room temperature, some raspberries, some jam, and some more chocolate.
To finish it off, we're going to be making a chocolate glaze using heavy cream and dark chocolate.
Ooh, that sounds like a tasty cake.
But before we start baking, you might think that these ingredients are just ingredients.
But did you know that every single ingredient we are using here today is bound by European consumer and product protection rules?
Essentially, consumer protection laws are in place to protect consumers from fraudulent business practices, defective products, and dangerous goods and services.
And actually, for simple ingredients like eggs, there's a whole regulation process that sets standards for how they should be regulated. And here we are using Class A eggs.
Obviously, I was aware that in the EU, the quality of products do need to be regulated, but I never thought about the detail. For example, to think that one egg is governed by a whole regulation is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about.
And even flour is regulated by EU law. And it actually has very strict labeling requirements in order for it to be sold. This is because wheat flour is an allergen for a lot of people who don't tolerate gluten, so it needs to be clearly indicated in the packaging.
We've gone ahead and added the flour to the bowl. Let's move on to the milk.
But make sure to check the expiry date.
It says 16th of December. We're good.
Have you ever thought about the difference between the use by and best before dates on packages?
Actually, I have, and it turns out that the use by date is different from the best before date. The best before date, also known as the date of minimum durability, is defined as the date until which the food retains its specific properties when properly stored, which basically means it's not dangerous to consume after this date, but it no longer holds its properties.
But if a product was to become dangerous after a certain date, it needs to be labeled as use by rather than best before. So for example, since kefir is a dairy product, it's going to have the use by labeling. So now that we've mixed in the liquid products, we're going to start with the dry products.
Okay, so you're going to want to pour 1/3 of your batter into a cake pan with butter in it, and repeat this for the other 2 and 3 layers. Now that the cake batter is in the pan, we're going to go ahead and bake this cake for 25 to 27 minutes at 175 degrees Celsius. So, while the cake is in the oven, let's get started and prep the chocolate cream.
So what we need to do first is add in the softened butter inside the bowl.
Softened, not melted. Got it.
Exactly. So we need to mix it until it's smooth and then add in the powdered sugar.
You know, actually, last year in one of our first year classes, when we were learning about how to use Lex, I was procrastinating looking up what we actually had to do. And then I ended up going down this rabbit hole of standardization. And I very vividly remember that I learned that harmonized standards in EU for different goods and products are actually usually voluntary.
So you were procrastinating researching law while researching law.
We don't talk about it. But I wanted to say that product standards are developed to create common rules that would make these products work together better. However, manufacturers and other bodies remain free to decide whether they actually want to use these EU harmonized standards or other solutions that would demonstrate compliance with the mandatory legal requirements.
It sounds kind of complicated.
It really isn't. Take this powdered sugar packaging as an example. There is a directive that sets standards to how powdered sugar and other products should be packaged so that they meet fundamental EU rights. For example, environmental protection.
So would that mean that the directive then has requirements for the reusability of the packaging?
Yes, exactly. And you can find that in the Annex 2 in the directive. You know, maybe you should try enlarging your knowledge instead of binge watching Suits all day.
Fair enough, but Suits is addictive.
You're right, but let's focus on the cake for now because we can only deal with one disaster at a time, like the exam results.
Don't even remind me. Okay, I will add in the cocoa powder and then you add in the vanilla extract.
Perfect.
Since the vanilla extract we're using is natural, that means that at least 95% of the flavoring component needs to be coming from vanilla beans.
That's such an interesting fact.
Now, at this point, it's very important you don't overmix the ingredients, otherwise the cream will separate.
You got it.
Now that the cream is ready, our attention goes on to the best part of the chocolate cake, the chocolate glaze.
Okay, I'll put the heavy cream in the pan, and you can start chopping up the chocolate chunks.
You know, I've only realized recently that to see what a product is made of, you only really need to read the first 3 ingredients.
How come?
Well, that's because they're listed in a descending order based on weight. So the first 3 ingredients are the heaviest that make up the product. So it makes up the whole, yeah.
It's like reading the first 20 pages of a book and figuring out the plot already in the beginning.
So I think we're done with the glaze.
Oh my god, it smells so good. I'm fighting the urge to eat it right now.
Don't you dare. We need to assemble the cake first and then decorate it.
Okay, let's get to assembling.
So that's a wrap for our first episode, but don't worry, we've got plenty more coming.
Every ingredient in this cake, just like every product in the EU, follows a clear legal recipe. And that's how European law keeps both our markets and our meals fair and transparent. Think of this as the legal version of a perfect cake recipe.
That's it for Baking Together with ELSA. We are Matea
and Zeynep.
See you next time.